y'all hear me always talking about the money. A lot of people get uncomfortable. Black people even get real uncomfortable when I talk about the money. And the reason they get uncomfortable is because we are not used to talking about the money. They don't mind us talking about, oh, let's fight for public education, which I absolutely support. But what you never hear is, who are the folks making money from public education? Who has the textbook contracts? Who has the food services contracts? Who has the pouring rights? Who has all of those different, the technology contracts? And so when I travel around this country and I'm talking about charter schools and I'll get black folks, Roland, how dare you? I can't believe you support charter schools. What's wrong with you? That's not right. It's not fair. Until I begin to break folks down about the money. So then when I tell them, if you want more, do you want more black history in school? They go, well, yes. I said, well, you do know when you control the charter school, you control the curriculum. They go, what? Then I tell them, well, they say, well, I said, do you want more STEAM, science, technology, engineering, math, arts in the school? Absolutely. You want band? You want the choir? Absolutely. You do know when you control the curriculum, you do that. I said, you do know when you control the charter school, you control who gets the contracts. You control who gets the construction contracts, who gets the engineering contracts, who gets the janitorial contracts, who gets the textbook contracts, who gets the food services contracts. They look at me going, we control all of that. And I go, yeah, we control all of that. Now, I understand the game that folks play when it comes to charter school. People say, well, some of these charters ain't good. You're absolutely right. And as a co-founder of School Choice is the Black Choice, a sponsor of this segment, I say get rid of that what does not work. But that also includes horrible public traditional schools that impact our children. I only believe in success. Public traditional schools, magnet schools, homeschool, online, public charter schools, we can go down the line. If our children are learning, then I am supportive of it. That is my position on charter schools. I want black people controlling, not running, because you can run a charter school, but we don't control it. I want us controlling more public charter schools where we are in control of the education of our children. So last month, the Biden administration introduced a proposal to reduce federal funds to charter schools. The proposal would force charter schools to collaborate with public schools and justify their need in the community. The fact that public charter schools even exist shows you what the need is, because clearly the traditional schools ain't doing the damn job. Joining me now from D.C. is the Senior Director of Government Relations for the National Alliance for Public Charter Schools. To talk about this here is Ron Rice. Ron, glad to have you on the show. I walked through that for a reason, because I'm sure you get it the same way I do, and I travel around this country, and I've been in numerous cities, and people go, well, I just can't believe, you must be one of those private schools, brothers, who support charter schools. I was like, nah, public elementary, public middle school, public high school, public college. I ain't never went to a private school. But what I do understand is if there is a mechanism that gives us actual control over the education of our children, ain't no way in hell I'm gonna say no.
Brother, I got to give you a major 06 to your opening statement, because you hit the nail right on the head. The reality is that the administration, through the Department of Education, is proposing an incredible number of new regulations that would stranglehold the exact schools that we've been talking about. We have a lot of issues with some of these regs, but the most prominent one is proposed rules by the Department of Education actually will require applicants to propose racially and economic diverse models. Sounds good, right? But regardless of community need, which will disadvantage urban areas, culturally affirming school models, and models that are serving indigenous populations. And so, to your point, an urban prep in Chicago, which for the last 11 years has graduated Black boys 11 years in a row, 100% of their student body, and sent those same boys to HBCUs, another 4-year colleges, 100% for the last 11 years. That kind of school was created to deal with Black boys, a particular interest. And so the school is 99.9% Black because parents want that, and it's a choice that they make. But under these regulations, right, they would have to, in the name of diversity, go against the culturally affirming reason that they were even started. That was the community need to service Black boys who were not getting serviced by traditional schools. But they would have to bring in other nationalities, whites, students, and others to meet this diverse definition that doesn't make a lot of sense. And so when a community need requires a Hmong school for Asian students, charter school, or Cherokee and Lakota schools to teach the culture and language of indigenous populations, that's open enrollment, anybody can go, but they're specifically tailored to meet the community need of the students that actually need it in that particular community. And these kind of regulations from the administration actually choke off that very intent that parents are demanding across the country.
The thing that's interesting, as you were talking, we had the brother on our show, his last name is escaping me right now. I'll have it in a second. First name is Sean. He opened a charter school in Sean Hartnett. I'm sorry, Sean Hartnett.
Yeah.
Sean Hartnett opened a charter school in D.C. specifically for Black boys, and he took the same Black boys who had no interest in math and science at the traditional public school right down the street. They said, these boys cannot learn. Sean said, I don't think y'all are teaching them right. So Sean opens his public charter school right down the street from the exact same school. And all of a sudden, the same Black boys who were not learning down the street now are excited about math, excited about science, excited about English, and begin to improve because he understood I got to reach them in a different way. And so he said, if y'all were doing your job, I shouldn't have a job.
He's 150% right. The other thing that Sean did, and we both know him very well, is Sean went right to the community before he had any design about how he was going to create a school and said to the people in that community, what kind of school do you want? What do you want the curriculum to look like? What do you want the teachers to look like? What do you want us to do with the boys? And that's how he created school. It was organically created, authentically created from the community. But under these proposed regulations from the Secretary of Education, they would create a new definition of what community impact is that would actually be over what DC's community impact statements would be. And it would mandate, as you mentioned earlier, the district MOU and sign off on that new school. So if Sean had to deal with what this proposed regs are going to mandate, he'd have to go to that underperforming school down the street and get their permission to start his school and their sign off. And you know, Roland, as well as I do, that when you have a traditional district school that sees a potential of a high quality, high performing charter school coming onto its turf and potentially taking away its student bodies, they say no to those kind of schools. They reject that. They don't want a collaboration. They want an annihilation. And that's what our schools are looking at. And so Sean Hartnett, who may want to grow his school into a network, and I hope he does one day, would be running roughshod over the very rules that this administration is trying to put on him that would make sure that his schools would never be able to replicate or expand, no matter how high quality or high performing those results are of those kids. And that is tacitly wrong, and it definitely sends the wrong message to our students coming out of COVID with all the learning losses and other obstacles we're going to have to deal with after this 2-year pandemic.
Panel, time for your questions. I'll start with you, Matt Manning.
So, Ron, what I am confused about is what is behind this and who is behind this? Who's behind the push? I know it's the Department of Education promulgating these proposed regulations, but this seems pretty obviously counterintuitive to the success that a lot of charter schools have seen in particular communities. So, what's going on behind this, and who's behind, strangleholding those communities and charters this way?
There's an education establishment status quo that has existed in our country for hundreds of years that has never been able to educate the masses of Black folks, of Native American folks, of Asian folks, of Latinx folks, and those relationships go deep, they go wide, and they are millions and millions and hundreds of millions of dollars. And anything that challenges that system and anything that kind of goes against it, is with resistance. But those people also have a long history of being involved in electoral politics and in government, and support a lot of folks who are in office who care about our kids, but only get one side of this debate and one side of this argument. So I would say the traditional sort of status quo protectors of our system that has proven not to be able to educate the masses of our people. I won't go into more specifics than that. I think it's self-apparent who those elements and those forces are. But the reality is that after COVID, we need more, not less quality seats. We need more public school models that work and are no respecter of model, but are more respecter of what parents want and are more respecter of the results that come out of those particular schools.
Kelly.
Yeah, so I understand that the Biden administration is really restricting charter schools at the moment, but is there a way? Well, one, are there any Democrat proponents of charter schools that you can lean on to try and reverse this kind of situation? But also, more importantly, is there opportunity for bipartisan support that is not that basically makes this less polarizing as an issue so that everybody wins in this case?
Yeah, that's an excellent observation. Historically, the charter school movement has been bipartisan. The charter schools program, the only line item for federal funding of new charter schools and replicating, expanding existing high quality charter schools, that was signed into law by President Bill Clinton. It's been supported by both Bushes, and the largest increase in the CSP program came from President Obama. So it's only been recently that this has not enjoyed bipartisan support in terms of the administration. And Congress, one of the strongest supporters of it was George Miller and others in Congress. Senator Bennett, Senator Booker are current leaders in this particular fight in Congress, and we lean on them for support. But historically, this has been a bipartisan issue. And if you look at polling data, for particularly African American and Latinx parents, it's 60 and 70% across the nation. And in the South, it's 80% support charter schools and other models of public education that are different than traditional schools. That is the base of the Democratic Party. Those are the people who are going to be coming out in midterm elections to decide the control of Congress. And we need to look nothing further than the polling that showed that years ago, Democrats had a 20% lead on Republicans on who would handle K through 12 education best. That is down to 5% now. And I think it's because our party, which has embraced and supported charter schools through a number of generations, is now seemingly running away from that idea. But it's also running away from the aspirations and hopes and obviously voting of folks who look like us, that are Black and brown throughout this nation. And so we have to get back to that. We have a research report that showed that during the pandemic, the only model of public education that actually grew in enrollment during the height of the pandemic were charter schools, which saw a 7% increase in enrollment in the first year of the pandemic. That's 240,000 new students across America that decided to pick and choose a charter school to educate their children during probably the worst pandemic we've seen in our lifetime.
Michael.
Hello, Ron Rice. Thanks for coming on and sharing this information with us. So it looks like the real crackdown is on for-profit charter schools with the proposed changes coming from the Secretary of Education. I was trying to find out, do you think part of the change in the policy is coming from teacher unions and teacher unions advocating against charter schools? Just trying to find out. I'm not against teacher unions. My mother was a member of them. And then also the NAACP, National Urban League, other national African American organizations. How are they weighing in on this, or are they silent on this?
Yeah, so I'll answer your first question first. The regulations do have a piece of regulating for-profit entities, and we don't have a problem with that. And we think every entity who runs a charter school ought to be fully transparent and fully accountable. We want to make sure the rules, though, in terms of contracting with vendors and contractors, are the same for charter schools as they are with district schools, because district schools contract with for-profit entities, private entities, every day of the week and twice on Sundays when they need to. Charter schools need to do the same thing when it comes to school transportation and accounting services and curriculum buys. So we should be allowed to contract in the same way, and the rules of federal oversight need to be the same for that kind of contracting as they are for district contracting. But to your second point, but I was also going to say these regs go beyond just regulating for-profits, right? They are actually allowing district schools to mandate what type of charter school, or if a charter school can come into that district. They're requiring MOUs potentially between the district school and the charter school to come in. As I mentioned, they're pushing a diversity attachment that they're not doing with traditional district schools, but that would curb and harm culturally affirming schools. But in terms of the organization that you mentioned, not a lot of them have weighed in on this. The NAACP has not since a number of years ago when they came out with their request for a moratorium. But I would share with you that organizations like the National Urban League, its affiliates, actually run charter schools. The UNCF, as you might have read, just entered into an agreement working with the Bloomberg Foundation, if you will, to get a grant to fund HBCUs starting charter schools. So Black institutions are not decreasing the number of charter schools that they're starting; they're increasing them. There are a number of incredible charter schools led by members of the Divine Nine. I mentioned Urban Prep, who's run by an alpha man, and there are other initiatives and other fraternities that are doing so at the local level. And so, as more and more institutions within our community are embracing charter schools as another model, a way of educating our kids, where the district schools have not, our elected officials, our government officials need to be following suit and not be dragged along, but should be leading the call alongside them to talk about we need a new deal when it comes to education. And maybe, just maybe, this model of high quality, high performing charter schools in the right hands of people of color who know how to educate our kids, but don't want the restraints and the constraints that they have had on them and leading traditional district schools. Maybe this is a model that we can look at. We certainly look at it as self-determination amongst our people to pick the kind of schools that we want to have in our communities and to demand the ability to run them and own them and control them in the way that our history has taught us to do. And it's in our DNA as a people in America to create the very institutions that will address our pain and our suffering when existing institutions have not.
Ron Rice, certainly keep us abreast of what happens next on this policy front.
Will do. Thank you for the time.
Thank you very much.